They say the Knights Templar were guardians of Christ's treasure. They say we protected pilgrims on the road to Jerusalem. They say we were holy warriors of God. They lied. My name is Sir Geoffrey de Montfort, and I was there when the greatest deception in human history began. I was there when we discovered what lay beneath Solomon's temple. I was there when 9 men decided to reshape the world through blood and lies. Tonight, I break my silence. Tonight, I tell you what really happened in that cursed vault beneath Jerusalem. Tonight, you will learn why kings trembled before us, why the Pope himself feared our power, and why Philip the Fair of France had to destroy us before we destroyed everything he held sacred. But first, let me tell you about the night that changed everything. The night we found the scroll that was never meant to exist. The night Brother Marcus died screaming truths that should have stayed buried forever. It was the year of our Lord 1307, and I had served the temple for 15 faithful years. I believed in our mission. I believed in our righteousness. God help me, I believed in our lies. Before I continue with this story that will shake the very foundations of what you thought you knew about history, I need your help. If this tale of conspiracy, betrayal, and secrets that shaped our world intrigues you, please support this channel. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support allows me to bring you more untold stories from the shadows of history. Now, let me take you back to that fateful October night when everything I believed crumbled to dust. The rain fell like God's tears upon the stones of our commandery in Paris. I remember because I stood watch that night, listening to the droplets echo through the corridors like whispered warnings. Brother Marcus had returned from the Holy Land 3 days prior, carrying with him a burden that seemed to age him decades in mere hours. "Geoffrey," he whispered to me in the depths of the night, his voice trembling like autumn leaves. "We must speak. But not here. Not where ears might listen and tongues might wag." I followed him through the labyrinthine passages beneath our stronghold, past chambers where our gold was counted and our weapons blessed. The torch in his hand cast dancing shadows that seemed to mock our very presence. We descended deeper than I had ever gone before, to a vault I never knew existed. "What is this place, Brother Marcus?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "This," he said, placing his hand upon an ancient wooden chest, "is where we keep our darkest treasure. The one that gave us power over kings and princes. The one that made us rich beyond the dreams of Croesus himself." With trembling hands, he opened the chest. Inside lay not gold, not silver, not jewels, but scrolls. Ancient parchments that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. He lifted one with the reverence one might show a holy relic, yet his face was twisted with disgust. "Do you know what this is, Geoffrey?" he asked, holding the scroll toward the flickering torchlight. I shook my head, suddenly afraid to speak. "This," he said, his voice now steady as steel, "is the confession of Joseph of Arimathea. Written in his own hand as he lay dying in Glastonbury. Do you understand what that means?" The blood in my veins turned to ice water. Joseph of Arimathea, the man who buried Christ. The man who caught the blood of our Savior in the Holy Grail. I reached for the scroll with shaking hands. "Read it," Marcus commanded. "Read it and understand how deep our betrayal goes." The ancient Aramaic text swam before my eyes, but I had been well educated in the languages of the Holy Land. What I read there that night still haunts my dreams. Still fills my mouth with the taste of ash and my heart with the weight of damnation. Joseph of Arimathea wrote of a different truth. A truth that would shatter the very foundations of Christendom if it were ever revealed. He wrote of what really happened in that tomb. He wrote of the conspiracy that began not with us, but with the very apostles themselves. Impossible, I breathed, but the words on the parchment were undeniable. The hand that wrote them belonged to a man facing eternity, with no reason to lie. "Now do you understand?" Marcus asked, his eyes burning with fever or madness, I could not tell which. "Now do you see why we possess such power? Why kings bow before us and popes fear to cross us? We are not guardians of faith, Geoffrey. We are the guardians of the greatest lie ever told. I stumbled backward, the scroll falling from my nerveless fingers. The parchment struck the stone floor with a sound like thunder, though I knew it was merely my imagination. Everything I had believed, everything I had fought for, everything I had killed for in the name of God, it was all built upon a foundation of sand. How long have we known? I managed to ask, though my throat felt parched as the desert. Since the beginning, Marcus replied, carefully returning the scroll to its resting place. Since Hughes de Payens and his 8 companions first descended into the ruins beneath Solomon's temple in the year 1119. They went searching for treasure, Geoffrey. They found something far more valuable than gold. He gestured to the other scrolls in the chest. Records, Geoffrey. Testimonies. Evidence of what really transpired in Jerusalem after the crucifixion. Documents that prove our entire faith is built upon the greatest deception in human history. But why? I asked, sinking to my knees upon the cold stone. Why perpetuate such a lie? Marcus knelt beside me, his hand upon my shoulder like a weight I could barely bear. Because power, my friend, is the only true currency in this world. With these documents, we could destroy the church itself. Every king, every pope, every bishop knows this. They pay us tribute not out of respect for our martial prowess, but out of fear that we might reveal what we know. The donations, I whispered, understanding flooding through me like poison. The lands granted to us, the exemptions from taxes, the right to answer only to the Pope himself. All bought with blackmail, Marcus confirmed. We are not knights, Geoffrey. We are extortionists. We hold the very soul of Christendom hostage. I thought of all the men I had fought beside, all the brothers who had died believing they served God's will. Had they known? Had they all been part of this monstrous deception, or were they innocent pawns like myself? How many know? I asked. The inner circle. Perhaps 24 men across all our commanderies. The rest serve faithfully, believing in our noble cause. It is better that way. Easier to maintain the illusion when most who serve us serve honestly. I looked up at him then, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. And you? How long have you known? I was inducted into the inner circle 5 years ago, when I was appointed treasurer of our commandery in Acre. The Grand Master himself revealed the truth to me, as it was revealed to him, as it has been passed down through our leadership for nearly 2 centuries. Dear God, I breathed, but the name felt hollow on my lips. How could I call upon a deity whose very existence was thrown into question by the documents before me? Marcus stood, brushing dust from his robes. God has nothing to do with this, Geoffrey. This is the work of man. Clever, ambitious, ruthless men who saw an opportunity and seized it. We are the inheritors of their vision. But surely, I said, grasping for hope like a drowning man reaches for driftwood, surely there must be those who would oppose this? Surely there are good men within our ranks who would see this ended. Marcus's laugh was bitter as winter wind. There have been those who tried. Brother Arnaud questioned too deeply 3 years past. He was found dead in his cell, apparently having succumbed to fever. Brother Guillaume began asking uncomfortable questions about our finances. He met with a most unfortunate accident while traveling to our commandery in Provence. The implication struck me like a physical blow. You kill your own brothers. We protect our secrets, Geoffrey. As you must now learn to do. As you must now help us to do. Never, I said, rising to my feet with renewed determination. I will not be party to this deception. I will not help perpetuate this lie. Marcus's expression hardened. You will, Geoffrey. Because if you do not, you will join brothers Arnaud and Guillaume in whatever afterlife awaits faithless knights. And more than that, think of your sister, sweet Marie, safe in her convent outside Reims. Think of your nephew, young Pierre, studying at the cathedral school in Chartres. Accidents, as I mentioned, are most unfortunate things. The thread hung between us like a blade suspended by a thread. My hands clenched into fists, every instinct screaming at me to strike down this man who dared threaten my family. But I was no fool. If Marcus could speak so casually of murdering fellow Templars, he could certainly arrange the deaths of innocent civilians. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Your loyalty," Marcus replied simply. "Your silence. And your assistance in a matter of utmost delicacy." He moved to another chest, this one bound with iron and secured with a lock that seemed to have been forged in the very depths of hell. From within, he withdrew a single piece of parchment, this one bearing the seal of Philip the Fair, King of France. "Our Royal Majesty grows restless," Marcus said, holding the document toward the torchlight. "He has been borrowing heavily from our coffers to fund his wars against the English. His debts to us now exceed the yearly revenue of his entire kingdom." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the damp air of the vault. "He cannot repay us. Worse than that," Marcus continued. "He has discovered that we possess certain leverage over the church. He has been making inquiries, sending spies to investigate our activities. He knows we hold some great secret, though he does not yet know what it is. And if he discovers the truth?" Marcus's smile was terrible to behold. "Then he will have the means to destroy us utterly. Think of it, Geoffrey, what would happen if the King of France announced to the world that the Knights Templar possessed proof that Christ's resurrection was a fabrication? What would happen to our power then?" The implications crashed over me like a tide. The Church would turn against us. Every Christian king in Europe would demand our heads. We would be branded as heretics of the highest order. Precisely. And Philip knows this. He has been quietly building a case against us, gathering evidence of our supposed heresies and blasphemies. He plans to strike soon, Geoffrey. Within days, perhaps hours. "Then we must flee," I said. "Gather what we can and escape to lands beyond his reach." "Flee?" Marcus laughed. "My dear Geoffrey, you still do not understand the scope of what we face. Philip is not acting alone. He has the support of Pope Clement, who owes his position to French influence. He has been coordinating with other monarchs across Europe. This is not a local persecution, this is a coordinated effort to destroy us utterly. The weight of our situation pressed down upon me like a mountain. Then we are already dead men." "Not necessarily," Marcus said, his eyes gleaming with desperate cunning. "There is another way. A final gambit that might yet preserve our order and our secrets." He withdrew another document from the chest, this one bearing multiple seals. "For months, we have been secretly negotiating with certain parties. Muslim princes who would welcome our knowledge and our gold. Eastern Orthodox bishops who care nothing for Roman authority. Even certain noble families who have their own reasons for despising the French crown. You would have us flee to the lands of the infidel. I would have us survive, Geoffrey. And in surviving, preserve the greatest secret in human history for future generations. Think of what we possess, not just the Joseph Scrolls, but documents from the earliest days of Christianity. Testimonies from eyewitnesses to the crucifixion. Evidence that could rewrite the entire history of our faith. Evidence that could destroy it utterly," I countered. "Or transform it into something greater," Marcus said. "Something based on truth rather than lies. We have the power to reshape Christianity itself, Geoffrey. To create a new understanding of faith that does not require miraculous resurrections or divine interventions. A religion of reason rather than superstition." The blasphemy in his words was staggering, yet I could not deny the terrible logic behind them. If what the Joseph Scrolls claimed was true, then everything we believed about Christ was indeed a lie. But did that mean the entire message was false? Could there not be truth in the teachings, even if the resurrection was fabricated? "You see," Marcus said, noting my thoughtful expression. "You begin to understand. We are not merely preserving secrets, Geoffrey. We are preserving the future of human spiritual development. In the right hands, this knowledge could free mankind from the tyranny of superstition. And in the wrong hands, it could destroy the faith of millions, I replied. Faith built on lies deserves to be destroyed, Marcus said flatly. Better to face hard truths than comfortable deceptions. Before I could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors above us. Marcus's face went pale as parchment. They come, he whispered. Philip's men. We are betrayed. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied now by the rattle of mail and the scrape of steel on stone. Marcus moved with sudden urgency, gathering the most critical documents from the chests. Who? I demanded. Who betrayed us? It matters not, Marcus replied, stuffing scrolls into a leather satchel. What matters is that we preserve what we can. Geoffrey, you must take these documents. You must carry them to safety. I will not. I protested. I will not be party to perpetuating these lies. Marcus seized me by the shoulders, his eyes burning with desperate intensity. Listen to me, you fool. If Philip captures these documents, he will not destroy them. He will use them to blackmail the church into submission. He will become the most powerful monarch in history, able to bend both temporal and spiritual authority to his will. Is that what you want? The thunder of approaching soldiers grew ever closer. I could hear voices now, harsh commands echoing through the stone passages. They were searching methodically, checking each room, each corridor. There is another way, I said, sudden inspiration striking me. We could destroy the documents ourselves. Burn them here and now. Let the truth die with us. Marcus stared at me as if I had sprouted horns. Destroy knowledge. Destroy history. You would condemn future generations to live in ignorance. I would spare them the pain of disillusion, I replied. Some truths are too dangerous to exist. And who are you to make that decision for all humanity? Marcus snarled. You would play God with the greatest discovery in human history. The irony of his words was not lost on me. We had been playing God for nearly 2 centuries, using our secret knowledge to manipulate kingdoms and control the faithful. Now he accused me of the same crime for wishing to end it. The sounds of searching grew closer still. We had perhaps minutes before they found our hidden sanctuary. Choose, Geoffrey, Marcus said, holding out the satchel. Take these documents and preserve them for posterity, or watch as they fall into the hands of a tyrant who will use them to enslave both church and state. Before I could answer, a new voice echoed through the vault, a voice I recognized with sinking heart. Brother Geoffrey? Brother Marcus? I know you are down there. It was Brother Theobald, our own treasurer, his voice carrying clearly through the stone corridors. Marcus and I exchanged glances of mutual understanding. The betrayal had come from within our own ranks. Theobald, Marcus called out, his voice remarkably steady. What is the meaning of this intrusion? The meaning, came the reply, is that your heretical activities have finally been exposed. King Philip's investigators have been watching you for weeks. They know about your secret meetings, your midnight ventures into the forbidden archives. They know you possess documents that threaten the very foundations of our faith. Marcus's jaw tightened. And you, brother? What is your role in this betrayal? Theobald appeared at the entrance to our vault, flanked by 6 soldiers wearing the colors of the French crown. His face was a mask of righteous indignation, but I could see guilt lurking in his eyes. My role, he said, is to preserve the integrity of our holy order. For too long, the inner circle has pursued knowledge that God never intended man to possess. For too long, you have used your secrets to corrupt the mission of the temple. Corrupt? Marcus laughed bitterly. Our corruption has made us the wealthiest military order in Christendom. Our corruption has allowed us to fund crusades and protect pilgrims for 2 centuries. Built on lies, Theobald replied. Built on the blackmail of innocent men. Built on the perversion of our Savior's message. And now you would hand our secrets over to Philip? I asked, finding my voice at last. You would make him the arbiter of truth? Theobald's expression flickered with uncertainty. King Philip has promised that the documents will be examined by learned theologians. Men of God who can determine what should be preserved and what should be destroyed. Fools and liars, all of you, Marcus spat. He clutched the satchel closer to his chest. Philip cares nothing for theological truth. He seeks only power, power to free himself from debt, power to control the church, power to remake Europe in his own image. The lead soldier stepped forward, his hand resting on his sword hilt. Enough talk. Surrender the documents or face the consequences. Marcus looked at me one final time. In his eyes, I saw not just desperation, but a terrible kind of hope. He believed, truly believed, that the knowledge we possessed could somehow improve the world. Even now, faced with capture and likely death, he could not bring himself to destroy what he saw as humanity's greatest treasure. Geoffrey, he whispered. Remember what I have told you. Remember the choice before us all. Then, before anyone could react, he hurled the satchel toward the torch that lit our vault. Time seemed to slow as the leather satchel arced through the air toward the dancing flames. I saw the terror in Theobald's eyes, the surprise on the soldiers' faces, the grim satisfaction on Marcus's features. The greatest secrets in human history hung suspended in that moment, caught between preservation and destruction. I moved without thinking, my body acting on instincts trained through years of combat. My hand shot out, intercepting the satchel mere inches from the torch. The weight of it in my grasp felt like holding the very soul of Christendom. No! Marcus screamed, lunging toward me. You don't understand what you're doing. But I did understand. Perhaps for the first time in this entire nightmare, I understood completely. These documents, these terrible secrets, this burden of knowledge, it was too great for any one group to bear. Too dangerous to preserve, too significant to destroy carelessly. The soldiers rushed forward, seizing Marcus and forcing him to his knees. He struggled against them, his eyes fixed on the satchel in my hands with desperate hunger. Geoffrey, he pleaded. Think of what you're throwing away. Think of the truth humanity deserves to know. I am thinking of it, I replied quietly. I'm thinking that perhaps some truths are too dangerous for humanity to bear. Perhaps some knowledge is better left buried. Theobald approached me cautiously, his hand extended. Give me the documents, Brother Geoffrey. Let us end this madness once and for all. But I shook my head. No, Theobald. You understand no better than Marcus. You would hand these secrets to Philip, believing him to be more trustworthy. You would exchange one form of corruption for another. Then what would you have us do? Theobald asked, confusion clear in his voice. I looked around the vault, at the chests full of accumulated secrets, at the faces of men who had all chosen their own version of truth. Marcus, who believed knowledge should be preserved at any cost. Theobald, who believed it should be surrendered to royal authority. The soldiers, who served without questioning the implications of what they protected. I would have us choose wisdom over knowledge, I said at last. I would have us choose responsibility over power. With deliberate care, I opened the satchel and withdrew the Joseph scroll, the document that had started this entire revelation. The ancient parchment felt fragile in my hands, yet somehow weighty with the burden of centuries. You cannot, Marcus breathed. Geoffrey, you cannot destroy something so precious, so irreplaceable. Can I not? I asked. Tell me, Marcus, what good has this knowledge done? What noble purpose has it served? For 2 centuries, our order has used it to accumulate wealth and power. Now Philip would use it to bend the church to his will. Where is the benefit to humanity? Where is the great enlightenment you speak of? I held the scroll toward the torch. The flames danced eagerly, as if hungry for the ancient secrets. Knowledge without wisdom is not enlightenment, I continued. It is merely another form of ignorance. Power without righteousness is not strength, it is corruption. These documents have brought nothing but temptation and moral decay to all who possess them. But the truth, Theobald protested. Surely the truth has value in itself. What truth? I demanded. The truth that our faith is built on lies. The truth that millions of good people have lived and died for a falsehood. Tell me, Theobald, what comfort would such truth bring to a widow who finds solace in her belief that her husband waits for her in heaven? What peace would it offer to a dying child who believes in Christ's promise of eternal life? The torch flickered, casting shifting shadows across our faces. In its light, I could see uncertainty in every eye, even those of the soldiers who had come to arrest us. You would preserve lies for the sake of comfort? Marcus asked, his voice thick with disgust. I would preserve hope for the sake of humanity, I replied. And I would destroy secrets that serve only to corrupt those who possess them. The flames touched the edge of the scroll. The ancient parchment caught fire immediately, burning with a brightness that seemed almost supernatural. As the Joseph confession was consumed, I felt something lift from my shoulders, a weight I had not even realized I was carrying. Stop him, one of the soldiers shouted, but I was already reaching for the other documents in the satchel. One by one, I fed them to the flames. Testimonies that had never been meant for mortal eyes. Confessions that could topple kingdoms. Secrets that had shaped the hidden history of our world. All of it turned to ash and smoke, drifting up toward the stone ceiling of our underground vault. Marcus wept openly as he watched centuries of accumulated knowledge disappear. You fool, he sobbed. You damned fool. Do you realize what you've done? I've ended a conspiracy that should never have begun, I said, casting the last of the documents into the fire. I've freed our order from a burden that was destroying us from within. But even as I spoke the words, I wondered if I was right. Had I preserved humanity's innocence, or had I condemned it to continued ignorance? Had I prevented the corruption of truth, or had I perpetuated the very lies that Marcus claimed were destroying us? The questions haunted me even as the soldiers moved to place me in chains alongside Marcus and Theobald. The cells beneath the Louvre were cold and damp, filled with the moans of men who had once been the most powerful military order in Christendom. They had taken us in the night, exactly as Marcus had predicted, October 13, 1307, a date that would live in infamy among the surviving Templars scattered across Europe. I had been imprisoned for 3 weeks when they brought Marcus to my cell. He had been tortured, that much was clear from the way he moved and the marks upon his hands and face. Yet there was something else in his bearing, a strange kind of peace that I had not seen in him since that night in the vault. Geoffrey, he said, settling beside me on the straw-covered floor. I have something to tell you. Speak freely, I replied. We have little left to lose. The documents, he said quietly. The ones you burned. They were not the originals. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. What? The Joseph scroll, the testimonies, all of it, they were copies. Careful copies, made by skilled scribes, but copies nonetheless. The originals are hidden elsewhere, in places Philip will never find them. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You knew. When I burned them, you knew they were not the only copies. Marcus nodded slowly. I suspected you might make such a choice. Your character demanded it. So I took precautions. The true documents are safe, Geoffrey. They will survive this persecution, as they have survived others throughout the centuries. Then everything I did was meaningless, I said, my voice hollow with despair. The choice I made, the burden I took upon myself, it was all for nothing. Not for nothing, Marcus said, placing a hand on my shoulder. It revealed who you truly are. And it convinced Philip that we no longer possessed the leverage he feared. He believes the secret died with the documents you destroyed. That may be enough to save the lives of innocent Templars who knew nothing of our deeper purposes. I wanted to rage at him, to strike him for allowing me to believe I was making a meaningful sacrifice. But I found I had no energy for anger. Only a deep, soul-weary exhaustion. Why tell me this now? I asked. Because tomorrow, they will take us to the flames, Marcus replied. King Philip has decided to make examples of the inner circle. We will burn as heretics and blasphemers, our ashes scattered to the winds. But before we die, I wanted you to know that your choice mattered. It may not have destroyed the documents, but it proved that good men can still be found among us. Good men do not allow such secrets to exist, I said bitterly. Perhaps not, Marcus agreed. But they also do not allow them to be used for evil purposes. That is what you did, Geoffrey. You chose to protect humanity from knowledge it was not ready to possess. Whether that was wisdom or folly, history will judge. We sat in silence for a long while, listening to the distant sounds of other prisoners, some praying, some weeping, some raging against their fate. Finally, I found the courage to ask the question that had been burning in my mind since that night in the vault. The Joseph Scroll, I said. What it claimed about the resurrection, about the deception of the apostles, was it true? Or was it itself a fabrication? Marcus was quiet for so long that I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know, he admitted. I have studied those documents for years, Geoffrey. I have examined them with the finest scholars in our order. Some believe them to be authentic testimonies from the earliest days of Christianity. Others suspect they are clever forgeries, created by enemies of the faith in the centuries after Christ's death. Then how could you base so much on uncertain knowledge? I demanded. Because uncertainty is the human condition, Marcus replied. We live our entire lives making choices based on incomplete information. The Joseph Scroll may be true, or it may be false. The resurrection may have occurred, or it may be a beautiful lie that has given meaning to millions of lives. We cannot know with certainty. We can only choose how to act in the face of that uncertainty. And you chose to use it for power and gain. I chose to preserve it for future generations to evaluate, Marcus corrected. Perhaps that was wrong. Perhaps you were right to try to destroy it. But surely you can see the danger in allowing any authority, king or pope or military order, to decide what knowledge humanity is allowed to possess. I could see his point, much as I hated to admit it. If the documents were forgeries, then their destruction was no great loss. But if they were authentic testimonies from the time of Christ, then I had burned evidence that future scholars might have used to better understand the origins of our faith. There are no easy answers, I said at last. No, Marcus agreed. There never are. That is what makes us human. We must choose our path through moral darkness, guided only by whatever light we can find within ourselves. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. Our time was running short. Geoffrey, Marcus said urgently. Before they come for us, I need you to know something else. The documents may have survived, but the conspiracy dies with us. The surviving Templars who knew the truth will take that knowledge to their graves. The secret will be buried again, perhaps forever. Is that not for the best? I thought so once. Now, facing death, I am no longer certain. Perhaps some secrets are too dangerous to preserve. Or perhaps some truths are too important to suppress. I go to my death not knowing which we possessed. The footsteps stopped outside our cell. Keys rattled in the lock. Our final reckoning had come. They led us through the streets of Paris in chains, Marcus and I and 23 other Templars deemed to be leaders of our order's supposed heresies. The crowds that gathered to watch our procession were a mixture of the curious, the hostile, and the genuinely sorrowful. Some called us heretics and blasphemers. Others wept for men they had known as protectors and benefactors. King Philip himself was present at our execution, seated upon a raised platform that had been erected for the occasion. Pope Clement stood beside him, his face a mask of papal authority that could not quite hide his obvious discomfort with the proceedings. I wondered if he knew what secrets we truly possessed, or if he was merely Philip's unwitting pawn in this deadly game. As we were led to the stakes that had been prepared for us, I found myself searching the crowd for familiar faces. There, Brother William from our commandery in Troyes, dressed in peasant's clothing but unmistakable to one who had fought beside him in the Holy Land. And there, Sister Marguerite from the convent where my sister lived, her eyes wide with horror at what she was witnessing. They bound us to the stakes with heavy chains, piling kindling around our feet with methodical efficiency. The executioner was a professional, clearly experienced in the art of burning men alive. He knew how to arrange the wood to ensure a slow, agonizing death rather than the quick mercy of immediate incineration. "Geoffrey," Marcus called out to me from the stake beside mine. "Do you regret the choice you made? Do you wish you had preserved the documents?" I considered his question as the executioner completed his preparations. Around us, the crowd grew larger and more restless. Someone in the back was shouting prayers in Latin. Others were placing bets on how long we would survive the flames. "No," I said at last. "I regret many things about my life, Marcus, but destroying those documents is not among them. Whatever truth they contained, whatever knowledge they preserved, it was knowledge that corrupted every soul who possessed it. Better that it should die with us. Even if it means future generations will live in ignorance. Ignorance is not always evil, Marcus. Sometimes it is a mercy." The executioner approached with a burning torch. Philip raised his hand, preparing to signal the beginning of our execution. This was the moment, the final instant when I could recant, when I could confess to heresies I had never committed and perhaps save my life. Instead, I called out in a voice loud enough for the entire crowd to hear, "People of Paris. Citizens of France. I die innocent of the charges brought against me. I have never blasphemed against Christ, never denied his resurrection, never practiced the dark arts that King Philip claims. I die because I chose to preserve the innocence of faith over the corruption of hidden knowledge." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some seemed moved by my words, others skeptical. Philip's face darkened with anger. "Silence the heretic," he commanded. But I continued speaking, my voice growing stronger as I felt the approach of my final moments. "I have served the temple for 20 years, fought in the Holy Land, protected pilgrims on their sacred journeys. If I am guilty of anything, it is of learning that some truths are too dangerous for mortal men to possess. I chose to destroy such knowledge rather than see it used for corruption and gain." The executioner hesitated, torch in hand, looking to Philip for guidance. The king's jaw was clenched with fury, but he seemed reluctant to interrupt my final confession before so many witnesses. "Know this," I shouted to the crowd. "The Knights Templar died today not because we were heretics, but because we refused to become tools of royal ambition. We die because we would not surrender our independence to a king who seeks to control both church and state. Our deaths are not justice, they are political murder dressed in the robes of religious righteousness." "Enough!" Philip roared, rising from his throne. "Light the fires. Silence these blasphemers forever." The executioner moved toward my stake with his torch, but before the flames could touch the kindling, Marcus called out with a voice that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul. "Philip of France. Clement of Rome. You who condemn us for heresies we did not commit, you who destroy us for possessing knowledge you fear to understand, hear my curse upon you both. Before this year is ended, you will both be called to answer before God's tribunal for the innocent blood you shed this day." The crowd fell silent at Marcus's words. Even Philip seemed shaken by the terrible prophecy. In the sudden quiet, I could hear only the crackling of the executioner's torch and the distant tolling of church bells across the city. Then the flames touched the kindling around my feet. The pain was beyond description, beyond anything I had experienced in 20 years of warfare. Yet as the fire climbed higher, as my flesh began to char and my vision blurred with agony, I felt something unexpected, peace. The burden I had carried since that night in the vault was finally lifting. The terrible knowledge that had poisoned our order was dying with me. Through the smoke and flames, I saw Marcus burning beside me. His lips were moving in what might have been prayer or curse, I could not tell which. Around us, the other Templars faced their deaths with varying degrees of courage and despair. And in the crowd, I glimpsed faces I recognized, surviving members of our order who had escaped Philip's purge. They watched with expressions of horror and determination. Whatever secrets Marcus had hidden, whatever knowledge had survived the destruction of the documents I burned, it would pass to them. The conspiracy would continue, buried deeper now but not eliminated. As consciousness began to fade, I found myself wondering if I had made the right choice after all. Perhaps Marcus was correct, perhaps future generations deserved to know the truth about the origins of their faith, no matter how disturbing that truth might be. Perhaps I had preserved comfortable lies at the expense of necessary knowledge. But then I thought of my sister Marie, praying peacefully in her convent. I thought of young Pierre, studying to become a priest with honest faith in his heart. I thought of all the simple believers who found comfort and meaning in their devotion to Christ's message of love and redemption. If the Joseph scroll was true, if the resurrection was indeed a fabrication, what would such knowledge bring them? Would it free them from superstition, as Marcus claimed? Or would it simply rob them of hope without offering anything meaningful in return? I died not knowing the answer to that question. I die still not knowing. But death, I discovered, was not the end of my story. Something, call it divine providence, call it the weight of unfinished business, call it the restless spirit of a man who died with too many unanswered questions, allowed me to witness what came after. Pope Clement died less than a month after our execution, writhing in agony from what the physicians called a sudden fever. Philip followed him to the grave before the year was out, killed in a hunting accident when his horse threw him against a tree. Marcus's curse had found its mark with terrible precision. But their deaths did not end the conspiracy. As I had feared, the secret knowledge survived. The documents I had thought to destroy with fire lived on in hidden archives, passed down through generations of initiates who believed themselves guardians of ultimate truth. I watched, invisible and helpless, as the centuries passed. I saw the surviving Templars go underground, forming secret societies and hidden brotherhoods. I witnessed the rise of the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Rosicrucians, all of them inheritors, in one way or another, of the knowledge that had once corrupted my order. Some used the secrets for noble purposes, seeking to advance human learning and enlightenment. Others employed them for personal gain and political manipulation. All of them, in their way, perpetuated the fundamental question that had tormented me in life: what right does any group have to decide what truths humanity should know? I saw the Protestant Reformation tear Christianity apart, as scholars began questioning the authority of Rome and demanding access to forbidden knowledge. I wondered if the reformers knew about the Joseph scroll, if their revolt against papal authority was driven by secret wisdom passed down from Templar survivors. I witnessed the scientific revolution, as men like Galileo and Newton challenged religious orthodoxy with empirical observation and mathematical proof. Again, I wondered if their courage to oppose established doctrine came from knowledge that our faith was built on shaky foundations. I watched the Enlightenment unfold, with philosophers like Voltaire and Diderot attacking organized religion as superstition and fraud. Their arguments sometimes echoed points that Marcus had made in that vault beneath Paris, though I could never determine if they had access to our hidden documents or if they simply arrived at similar conclusions through reason alone. The Industrial Revolution brought new forms of power and corruption. The secret societies that claimed descent from the Templars found themselves with unprecedented opportunities to influence global events. Some worked to promote democracy and human rights. Others sought to consolidate wealth and control among a chosen few. Through it all, the question remained: would humanity be better served by truth or by faith? By knowledge or by hope? In the year 1945, as I watched atomic fire consume 2 Japanese cities, I began to understand what Marcus had meant about knowledge being a double-edged sword. The scientists who split the atom had unlocked secrets of nature that gave them godlike power to create and destroy. Yet they had little wisdom to guide them in using that power responsibly. The parallels to our ancient dilemma were unmistakable. Knowledge without wisdom was indeed dangerous, perhaps more dangerous than ignorance itself. As the 20th century progressed, I watched new secret societies emerge from the shadows of the old. Intelligence agencies that hoarded classified information. Corporate cabals that manipulated markets and governments. Religious cults that claimed exclusive access to divine truth. All of them, in their way, faced the same choice that had confronted the Knights Templar 7 centuries earlier: how much truth should be shared, and with whom. The invention of the internet changed everything. Suddenly, information that had been restricted to elite circles for generations became available to anyone with a computer and a phone line. Conspiracy theories multiplied like weeds, mixing genuine hidden history with pure fantasy. Truth and falsehood became harder to distinguish as the volume of available information grew exponentially. I saw people stumble across fragments of the Templar legacy, documents that had somehow survived in monastery archives, legends that preserved distorted echoes of our secrets, archaeological discoveries that raised uncomfortable questions about early Christian history. Each revelation sparked fierce debates between believers and skeptics, between those who insisted faith required no proof and those who demanded evidence for every claim. And through it all, I sensed the presence of the surviving conspiracy, the hidden inheritors of the knowledge Marcus and I had fought over. They were still there, still guarding their secrets, still manipulating events from behind veils of anonymity. The faces changed, the methods evolved, but the fundamental dynamic remained the same. In 2006, nearly 700 years after my death, a construction crew working near the site of our old Templar commandery in Paris uncovered a hidden chamber. Inside, they found documents, not the originals that Marcus had claimed to preserve, but later copies made by scribes who had access to our archives. Among them were fragments of the Joseph Scroll. The discovery made international news, sparking exactly the kind of theological crisis that I had feared centuries earlier. Christian scholars denounced the documents as obvious forgeries. Secular historians argued for their potential authenticity. Religious believers found their faith shaken by questions they had never considered. As I watched the controversy unfold through television broadcasts and internet forums, I realized that my ancient choice between preservation and destruction was still being played out on a global stage. The knowledge was finally escaping its bonds, spreading beyond the control of any secret society or hidden brotherhood. Some people responded with anger, denouncing the documents as attacks on their faith. Others welcomed them as liberation from religious dogma. Most simply struggled to understand what the revelations meant for their personal beliefs and their understanding of history. I found myself wishing I could speak to them, these modern truth-seekers wrestling with the same questions that had tormented me. I wanted to tell them that the documents might be authentic, or they might be forgeries, but that the real question was not what happened in ancient Palestine, but how they chose to live their lives in the present. The message of Christ, love your neighbor, forgive your enemies, care for the poor and suffering, remained valid regardless of whether the resurrection occurred as described in the Gospels. The question was not whether Jesus rose from the dead, but whether his teachings could rise from the dead in the hearts of people who had lost faith in supernatural explanations. As the 21st century dawned, I watched new generations grapple with eternal questions in modern contexts. Climate change, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, all raised fundamental issues about human responsibility and the proper use of power. The same moral dilemmas that had faced the Knights Templar now confronted entire civilizations. And still, the secret societies endured. Still, hidden groups claimed to possess ultimate truth and the right to guide humanity's destiny. Still, the fundamental question remained unanswered: who decides what humanity should know? Now, in this modern age of instant communication and global connectivity, I finally understand what I failed to grasp in life: the choice between knowledge and faith is not one that can be made once and settled forever. It is a decision that each generation, each individual, must make anew. The Joseph Scroll may have been authentic testimony from a witness to Christ's burial. Or it may have been a clever forgery designed to undermine Christian faith. 7 centuries of study by brilliant minds have failed to resolve the question definitively. Perhaps it never can be resolved. But that uncertainty is not a weakness, it is the essence of human freedom. We are not forced to believe or disbelieve based on incontrovertible proof. We are free to choose what meaning we find in the stories that shape our civilization. The Knights Templar discovered this truth too late, after we had already committed ourselves to manipulation and control. We thought possessing secret knowledge made us superior to ordinary believers. We were wrong. Knowledge without compassion is merely another form of ignorance. Power without humility is simply another kind of weakness. If I could speak to the modern inheritors of ancient secrets, the intelligence agencies and corporate cabals, the religious hierarchies and academic elites who still believe they know what's best for humanity, I would tell them what I learned too late: truth is not a possession to be hoarded. It is a light to be shared, even when that light reveals uncomfortable realities. The documents I tried to destroy have survived in one form or another, scattered across centuries and continents, preserved in archives I never knew existed. The secret I thought I was protecting has become common knowledge, debated in universities and discussed in online forums. The conspiracy I was part of has evolved and adapted, but it has never truly died. Perhaps that is as it should be. Perhaps humanity needs both the questioners and the believers, the secret keepers and the truth-tellers, the guardians of tradition and the agents of change. Perhaps the tension between them is what drives civilization forward. What I know now, what I wish I had understood when I stood in that vault beneath Paris, is that the choice between truth and faith is not really a choice at all. We need both. We need the comfort of belief and the challenge of doubt. We need the stability of tradition and the dynamism of discovery. We need the humility to admit our ignorance and the courage to seek knowledge despite the risks. The real heresy of the Knights Templar was not that we possessed dangerous secrets, it was that we thought those secrets made us special. The real blasphemy was not that we questioned the resurrection, it was that we believed our questions gave us the right to control other people's faith. Truth belongs to no one and everyone. It cannot be owned, only discovered. It cannot be controlled, only shared. And it cannot be preserved by hiding it in vaults or destroying it in flames, it can only be honored by allowing each person the freedom to seek their own understanding. So ends my confession, given 7 centuries after my death to a world that has changed beyond recognition yet faces the same fundamental choices. I was Sir Geoffrey de Montfort, Knight of the Temple, guardian of secrets that nearly destroyed my soul. I died believing I had made the right choice in trying to preserve humanity's innocence. Now I know there was no right choice, only the choice to be human, with all the uncertainty and responsibility that entails. The Templar conspiracy lives on in new forms, as it always has and always will. New secret societies guard new dangerous knowledge. New questions challenge old certainties. New choices await new generations. May they choose more wisely than we did. May they remember that the greatest secret is not hidden in ancient documents or buried in forgotten vaults. The greatest secret is this: we are all responsible for each other, and no knowledge is worth preserving at the cost of human compassion. Let those who have ears to hear, hear. Let those who have eyes to see, see. And let those who have the power to choose, choose love over fear, wisdom over cleverness, and truth over the comfortable lies we tell ourselves to avoid the burden of moral responsibility. This is my testimony. This is my confession. This is my warning to all who would follow in the footsteps of the Knights Templar. The curse Marcus pronounced upon our executioners has long since been fulfilled. But the deeper curse, the burden of secret knowledge that corrupts all who possess it, remains active in our world. It will remain active as long as human beings believe that some of them are qualified to decide what truths the rest of humanity should know. Break that curse. Share the light. Trust in the wisdom of ordinary people to handle extraordinary truths. That is the only redemption available to those of us who have walked the dark path of hidden knowledge. That is the only way the Knights Templar can finally rest in peace.